This means a lot for 9.0. Blizzard's BFA 180. So they turned all the way around. 180 has very big implications for WoW's future. Give me 1 second. I'm going to pause this, and I'm going to get on another character, and that way people can invite me over, and I can be killing the rares while I'm watching the video. I am a multitasking god, and I want to make sure that I'm playing like it. Okay, just give me 1 second. Doing anything special on the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11? I don't know. Maybe we can go to Argus or something. Okay, just give me a second. I'll get on Thug Fresh. Okay, here we go. Pause this. Oops. Okay.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video.
Okay.
So, let's be real. Blizzard kind of messed up some of the initial design elements of Battle for Azeroth.
Whoa, wait a minute. What do you mean? What is this Blizzard hater? What, he doesn't even like the game? What the fuck is this? This guy hates the game. Can you believe it? Oh my god. This mindless hating is ridiculous. 11-second pause record? No, it's not. I paused on the second before.
And you know what? They've pretty much said that themselves. Patch 8.2 was Blizzard's first large-scale patch that had a lot of lead time. Their first proper opportunity to respond to the deeper design problems of Battle for Azeroth, instead of the immediate firefighting that they were limited to doing with patch 8.1. Then also, based on past expansion timelines, well, this is when quite a lot of the team is going to be shifting over to the next expansion and doing a lot of work on it. Now, combine that with the content of 8.2, and I think...
I must say, if the people that made 8.2 make the next expansion, I'm already excited for it. I think 8.2 is good, and so hopefully that is the case.
We can actually predict what the future of the game is going to look like from a design perspective. So today we're going to be going through what Blizzard are moving towards and what they are moving away from.
Thug Fresh,
and we're going to kick it off with what I think is one of the best parts of this patch: zone depth. Mechagon and Nazjatar both have a lot more to them than Kulturas,
this is a big true,
or even Argus or the Broken Shore.
This is a
now,
big
in fairness,
true.
It wouldn't take much to pass some of those zones, but really what we've seen is quite encouraging. Things like Marty Vass's Laboratory, the Coral Ancients, the Fabius Tame, the Murloc Traders, a bunch of the rares, the more secretive elements, the just stuff like that. There's a lot more interesting stuff in these zones than what we've been used to lately. Now, combine these nice little shimmers of quality with the rest of what you end up seeing, and it's clear that Blizzard seem to be thinking more about the World of Warcraft, which is a good thing.
Thank fucking God. Like, in these previous expansions, the whole thing has just been a bunch of fucking... everything in the game feels like it's pretty much just a tool to move you from point A to point B. Rust Feather's up? Okay, let me go over to Rust Feather real quick. Okay. Alright, I'm on my way. Anyway, so yeah, just a second. Yeah, it's like... I think the best thing about the new zones is the pet battles. Because this is the first time that pet battles genuinely have a focus. So, like, you need to do pet battles to some degree. And I think that's good, because they're part of the game. You should make everything part of the game fitting together and working together.
Much as there still is a long way to go. Next, though, something that they're moving away from, and that is heavily randomized rewards. They're massively moving away from this. Previously in BFA, it was about your weekly caches, your Azerite lockboxes from the Emissary, that sort of thing. And then before that, on Argus, you got a random loot token for a slot that contained a random item at a random item level. That's mad.
Fun.
Before that, on the Broken Shore, that was another gear token lottery. Now, were those things fun and exciting? No, I don't think so.
Holy
I
shit.
certainly found them to be the least motivating world content gearing progression systems in the game. Now, sure, when you look at this patch, the essences aren't perfect. They may have a few issues, but fundamentally, they are putting the Legion Legendary tier effects onto direct sources with 0 RNG. Now, sure, you might like the activity that an essence comes from or something.
That's so fucking good. These essences, you literally go after them and you farm them, and there's a specific place that you farm them at. There's a specific thing that you do to get them, and after you do that thing, after you go to that place, after you get that achievement, you get the essence. Period. There's no bullshit, and it's fucking great. because it allows people to create goals.
Elements of the essences, but I think we can all agree it's far better than the Legion Legendary Lottery.
Yes.
Blizzard are clearly moving away from that sort of thing. We even see it with the benthic gear, and this leads me straight on to my next point, what Blizzard are moving towards, and that seems to be respecting players' time. It's pretty clear to me, regardless of the design wins or losses of Nazjatar or Mechagon, that they do respect your time as zones. Now, do I mean that the zones give you free stuff for no time put in? No, I don't mean that. But what I do mean is that the relationship between your input and the game's output is quite clear. You will get X amount of pearls per day by just doing this stuff. They'll translate into Y item level upgrades per week. Do you want to push loads of gear to item level 400? Do you want to get a single bit of gear to a very high item level? Well, you go and you earn the currency, and you can do with that currency whatever you want. There's no overarching...
Imagine giving a 75 rep for a world quest. Yeah, but you get 75 rep every single fucking time. That's the difference. That's what matters. That's what counts. It's not the fact that you're not getting as much rep for a world quest. It's the fact that you know what you're getting before you get it. Now, obviously, with the benthic gear, there's a certain amount of RNG. Just Mike, thank you very much for the 5 Give the Community subs. I appreciate that very much, man. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. But the RNG isn't really that bad. Like, with getting these different benthic armor pieces, even if you're doing them for, like, waiting for a socket or something like that, there's nothing else you're really going to be spending your mana pearls than basically using these items. So the amount of RNG that the benthic armor has, I think, is a fine amount of RNG. It's completely okay. I don't mind it at all. This might surprise some people, but I don't think that RNG is fundamentally bad. It's not. RNG has been in the game since day one, with boss drops, dungeon drops, etc. It used to be much worse than it is now. So the idea that having to buy a few extra pieces and roll the one that you want and have it be basically a 1 in like 20 to 50 chance is not really that big of a fucking deal. Okay? Just make pearls harder to get? No, the system is fine.
Blizzard gearing plan that you're directly falling into. You can distribute the resources you earn in the way that best fulfills your own goals.
Somebody invite me to a server where this rare is up,
still
please.
Not having a PvP vendor, but let's move away from that one. Where there was clear randomness in the past with the equivalent systems, there is now a clear deterministic system that lets you plan around it.
Orange Bucket with the 5 more gift the community subs too. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Those goals. I think this is a big win, and I'm fairly sure it's going to perform better for Blizzard over time. And with that, there's actually something that I think you might have noticed Blizzard move away from, and that is weekly front-loading. Because Nazjatar and Mechagon don't have those big weekly milestones in the same way that a lot of other content in the game has. Blizzard clearly decided against adding to the existing BFA crop of weekly activities, as compared to, say, Argus. It's especially
That's actually true.
Over in Argus, right, you got your big bursts of rewards just come from a few weekly quests that you could knock out in like an hour. This was a double-edged sword. Some people will have loved getting that quick burst of reward and not having to play all the time, but for others, they will have just felt like they have a week ahead of them where A, they feel like they have less to do, and B, the things that they can do are less time efficient as compared to the weekly, so they're not worth doing.
That's right. So it's like the 80-20 rule. So if you can get 80% of the rep in 20% of the time, there are very few people that want to spend 80% more time for the last 20% of the rep. So what it does is it basically conditions players into making conscious decisions to stop playing the game. Right? And this is what happened. And even like Kevin Jordan talked about this in one of his videos, right? Is that whenever you start creating things that create a habit of players logging on, right? Log on every day for this, log on every week for this, etc. Your game's fucked. Because now players are thinking about like how to optimize their time and not thinking about enjoying the game. And I do think that the weekly thing is a good idea. And Blizzard moving away from that is also a very, very good idea.
What do we see in the new zones? Well, I think it's pretty clear what we've got instead of the weekly front-loading. And that is what they're moving towards, the daily experience. Blizzard clearly are putting more thought into the daily process. With the 5 more get the community subs. Thank you very much, man. Holy shit, thank you guys. God damn, people have been gifting a lot of subs today. Thank you guys so much. World of Warcraft. Both of the game's 2 new zones do have wide-spanning achievements over weeks and weeks and weeks, but the gameplay really is heavily focused on the daily content, shifting away from those weekly meta tasks that we've seen a lot of in the past. Now, what has this resulted in? Well, I think split opinion. I think to some people it feels like too much
Shadows
stuff.
with the 5
Likely they
so
wouldn't be doing that content anyway, but maybe have decided to force themselves through it to get the best benthic gear quick, so that could be a balance issue. But then on the other side of that, clearly a lot of people have found this to be very motivating and are playing a lot of the game. Now, what's this actually done for the game? Well, I think what's happened is that it's combined with the depth that those zones have. Nazjatar and Mechagon really do seem to be good at getting people out into the world on a daily basis.
I agree with that.
Unlike the 8.0 zones,
I agree
it's
with that.
a world that has a lot more stuff going on, as we covered in the depth section of this video.
Big true.
With the rares being more interesting, your things in the lab,
Big
loads
true.
more achievements, and just, you know, a lot of that stuff that we've already covered in this video that's really good about the 2 new zones. So it does seem like the increased daily participation has helped them maximize the, well, just those design elements of these 2 new zones, and that does bring me on to another thing.
Well, that's the thing, right, is if you have daily quests versus weekly quests, you just do them a little bit and then you're fucking done. You know what I mean? Like, that's it. That's all there is to it. And I feel like that whole dynamic of having the weekly quests that only take like maybe 20 minutes to do, it's probably the most indirectly demotivating thing that the game has ever created, because it basically gives players a way to budget out their time and see how much is 1 hour of my time worth doing this versus doing something else. And whenever you remove the weekly component to it, you just have people working towards the goal at their own pace every single day, which I think is substantially better. I like that a lot more.
That is cooperation. Both Mechagon and Nazjatar have rares that strongly benefit from cooperation in ways that are just, you know, they're not just more damage. They feel a bit more similar to some of the rares in the Timeless Isles, like Hulon, for whom half the island would be, you know, racing over, creating somewhat of a mini event, which is a nice departure from, you know, your Gulp Frog farm back in the day. But even small things, like teaching players how to summon the Coral Giants, or maybe the rare that involves the paint colors in Mechagon, or maybe the Vault Bot rare. I think those things are...
The Coral Giants are a really good example of Blizzard doing something that's like, how do you learn about the Coral Giants? You don't really. You learn about them through other players. And I think that Blizzard took a big risk by creating content like that and making it as rewarding as it is. So whenever you're learning about content from other players, that's an interaction that you have. And even if you're reading about it on a fan website or whatever, you're still going out of your way to seek that knowledge. And I think the process of seeking the knowledge invests players more in the game, and I think it's better for the game overall. So I really like the Coral Ancients and the way that they work.
Fantastic. They're nice cooperative gameplay, and perhaps that's Blizzard just thinking that they really can do a lot to make the experience of running around the World of Warcraft feel more like an MMO in a sort of natural cooperative way, as opposed to, say, straight up grouping. And I think that is a good thing to have across the world. But speaking of cooperation, well, we've got the battle for Nazjatar. Now, this has been a mixed bag because of problems with the game's sharding system, but fundamentally, I think it's a great idea. Throughout BFA, we really have seen Blizzard begin to use war mode more and more and more, and this is really their best new example. I mean, sure, a few problems aside. And I think this means we're going to see a lot more of this happen in the future. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, the game's next expansion continent would have events like this going on in it. Well, they did this back in Burning Crusade even, right? And can somebody invite me up to a realm where the Arachnid Harvester is up? If he's up on your realm with war mode off, please go ahead and invite me. Thug Fresh on Kel'Thuzad. They did this back in Burning Crusade. They had the PvP events in Hellfire Citadel, in Zangar Marsh, and in the Grand. And nobody really did any of the ones besides Hala and the Grand. Nobody cared about the Zangar Marsh one. I don't even remember how it worked. And the Hellfire Citadel one was just, it was like whack-a-mole. You'd capture one, then they'd capture the other one, then you go to the one that they captured, then they capture the one that you captured. It's just like really fucking annoying. But the point is, right, is that they've done this a number of times and it hasn't really worked out that well. I think that now it's much better than it used to be. So I'm going to say that's a big positive there. Though, sure, PvP might not narratively make sense in the next expansion, but regardless, I think one thing is clear, world PvP is in. Sure, it's not for everyone, that is the case, but I do think that it can add another excellent layer of gameplay to the world, one that, combined with the deeper zones,
it's fucking awesome.
will make the world feel a lot less lifeless, and that is a really good thing. But of course, not all events are the Battle of Nazjatar. We also have our next thing, Terror from the Deeps, and just the idea of events, which they might be moving towards. It was pretty cool to see a zone-wide event in Nazjatar, but I will admit, I was let down by its scale and it just being that one.
Okay. Can we talk about these dumb fuck, stupid, goddamn, motherfucking things that spawn underneath the Eye of Ashara, this guy right here, that just instantly kill you and you don't even know where the fuck they are? Like, and they spawn under the water. I am so sick of that stupid ass shit, dude. Like, I fucking hate the Arcanor. They're so bad. They're so fucking bad. And like, what do you even get out of this? Like, I don't even know. The Fury of the Deep. I genuinely have no idea how this benefits my character at all. Like, I have no clue whatsoever. Does it, like, give me some sort of, like, cool thing? 50 rep. Really? I don't think I've ever gotten 50 rep from it. Maybe I just haven't been paying attention. Shit, okay.
Event. But still, things like this could be fantastic for the game if Blizzard are able to do a better job next time, and seeing them move in this direction is a nice thing. Now, they're going to need more events that have more impact on the zone. Going back to, say, even patch 5.3 of Mists of Pandaria, there was a lot that they could lift from there. Now, of course, that patch had issues, but it did have things like the Caravan raiding event, the defense events. I think there was one or two others. Sure, wasn't a great patch overall, but I think those things would really be a welcome feature in a deeper zone, one that has benefited from all the other stuff that we've talked about in this video.
Great.
So hopefully this PvE event in Nazjatar is an indicator that Blizzard want to do more of that in the future. But
we hope.
Let's just totally change pace. Storytelling, right? The storytelling in Battle for Azeroth is quite something, and there's a key difference in format between it and Legion. Now, sure, both expansions are heavily relying on their transmedia narrative content to tell their story, which I do kind of disagree with as a general way of doing things, but a key difference in
transmedia means that they're using multiple different ways. So, like, some of the media, some of the wars in the books, some of the wars in the game, some of the wars on the website, etc., right?
BFA is what Blizzard have done with the smaller 0.5 patches. These patches, seemingly as compared to the Legion counterparts, seem to be containing a heck of a lot more lore, and it seems very clear to me that Blizzard are just using this to give us a more episodic narrative, maybe giving us major plot updates every 3 months. Now, is that a good thing?
Yes.
It's hard to tell. It certainly could be a good thing if it was applied, in my view, to a better story. I think it could work out really well. After all, if they can use this format to increase their narrative screen time, it could do good things. And sure, so far we've only seen this in patch 8.1.5 with its narrative stuff. 8.2.5 hasn't came out yet, but I think from looking at the story of 8.2, knowing where 8.3 is probably going to go, 8.2.5 clearly has a lot of work that it's going to have to do. But let's move on to something totally different that Blizzard are moving towards, and that is a shift in reward design philosophy. You see, between Nazjatar and Mechagon, we've got quite a lot more in the way of character progression that's not tied to item level. The mounts this time are a bit more involved. The rares are a bit more involved. On the whole,
they're not more involved. It just takes longer to get them. I mean, let's be honest. How many fucking times have I flown over to Mechagon to try to kill Rustfeather and the Arachnid Harvester? I'm getting fucking tired of it. Like, but I mean, the reason is because they made the drop rates a lot lower. Like, I did this all the time. Like, I probably killed these rares 70 times or something like that. It's been insane. From horses to seahorses. Yeah, exactly. Doesn't matter if you get invited to another shard. No, because I still have to ride every character out there. I still have to wait for an invite to another shard, and I could just join pre-made groups whenever I'm offline anyway, like off my stream anyway. Like, it's not like it's a big deal. By the way, speaking of that, can somebody invite Faustus, alt0224, alt code, I think it's alt0224, up to a server that has Rustfeather or the Arachnid Harvester up. I'm going to try and get the rares on this character too. They do take a lot longer. The mounts take a lot longer to get this time around. In Argus, you literally just killed the mobs, got the mounts, and that was it. It was fucking boring. Like, let's be honest, it was fucking boring. They needed to do a much better job than they did now.
It does seem like Blizzard are trying to fulfill more of the RPG fantasy there.
Yep.
There's more to do along more axes of progression than there has been in the past with BFA, with the zone meta mounts, I think, being far superior to what we've seen recently, and then things like the paint jobs, the vinyls,
they
the
take longer
blueprints to collect.
Yeah.
Again, it's not perfect, but directionally, it's a step forward from what was quite dull and unmotivating in 8.0 to what I think now is a lot more compelling. And really, not all players are driven by item level. I think there's an emotional connection to one's character, and I think that is what drives a lot of why people play the game. You know, the other things aside from item level they want to collect. That's the type of thing that Blizzard, in my view, have been missing out on big time lately. And when you look at 8.2, I think, sure, maybe its tier set's visually flat, but they're doing a lot more in that regard, and it's a lot better. And then the final part of that is that a lot of it is overlapping progression, which I think generally is just a lot more satisfying when you're playing it. Next, though, more interesting gear. Blizzard have continued their Crucible of Storms gearing experiment.
That's great. Like, that's fucking great. Because the reason now that they have, like, this more interesting gearing thing, I'm going to say why it's fucking good, is because before, back in Legion, back in WoD, how did you decide what gear you wanted? You looked at the highest piece of, the highest itemable piece that had your 2 secondary stats, and you got that item. That was it. You didn't think about anything. You didn't plan for anything. You just did that same fucking dungeon. You did that same fucking raid every week, and that was all you needed to do. Now, you have an actual semi-pseudo best in slot. So you go into the raids. You look at, okay, well, this item gives me this bonus. Let's see, Queen of Shara belt gives me, you know, this thing. I know you guys can't see it because it's off the screen, but you know what I'm talking about. Okay, I want to get the Trident of the Deep from this boss in this zone. And so there's a lot more targeted farming. That's really, really good. I'm going to say that's amazing. And I think they should do that much more often. The idea of being able to work towards something that you actually want, the idea of being able to actually see a best in slot list and work towards that best in slot list is fucking amazing. I love it. Okay.
With the inclusion of a lot. Benthic effects, Mechagon punch cards, the unique effects from the Eternal Palace gear, as well as the logic loops from Operation Mechagon. Now, it's a balancing nightmare, sure.
It's fucking awesome.
But I think it's more enjoyable for the average player, and maybe a bit more than just the average player. And we really have to decide on what we want here as a community. Do we want a perfectly balanced esportsy game with massive design restrictions, or do we want to...
No, we don't. No, I don't want that. Nobody fucking wants that. That's the thing, is that nobody fucking wants that dog shit ass garbage. Oh wow, we want to make sure the game is fair. I want to make sure whenever I do an arena, I can't go up against counter combat. You know, like, what the fuck is this? Just it's an MMO. Like, making the game appeal to and being an esport, I think has made the game worse. The more they tried to make things fair, the worse the game has gotten. Because people don't play MMOs to be fair. They play them all day and all night to beat the shit out of somebody who only plays them all day. That's the way that it works. And then the guy that only plays them all day, yeah, he gets his ass beat by the guy that plays all day and night. But there's one dude that can only play once a week, and the guy that plays all day can beat his ass too. It's like it's a food chain, right? It's the food chain, the food pyramid, whatever that. No, it's not. That thing. That's the thing that has like vegetables and shit in it. I'm talking about the food chain, basically punching down. Exactly, the circle of life. That's what it's all about. And trickle down ganking, right? That's what it's all about. It's a circle of life or circle of death. Is you get killed by this guy who's really good, and then you go back and you kill some guy who's worse than you, then he says, son of a fucking bitch, I've got to get better at this game. And then he gets better. Like, nobody gives a fuck about it being an esport. Nobody cares. Do you know how I know that nobody cares? Because the Warcraft tournament's on right now, and it has 6,000 viewers. Nobody gives a fuck. The fact is, they want the game to be good, fun, entertaining. And you know what? That's going to be better for the players. It will be. Here's why. Because more people that are actively participating in the content are more potential viewers. Because the people that are participating in the content are going to have a higher chance of being able to watch competitive content about the content they're already participating in. Here's a good example of that. How many games do you watch for esports tournaments that you don't actively play? Probably 0. Maybe 1 if you're watching Counter-Strike or something, because it's really easy to do. The truth is, for a lot of people, they want to watch games that they are invested in and involved in. That's why PvP was so fucking popular back in Wrath, because everybody did it. Was it balanced? Shadowmourne. Fuck no. But it was good. It was good. Doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be balanced. Balance is, it is a false god. It is a false god. And Blizzard needs to look at the one true god of fulfillment. Nobody gives a fuck about balance. I'm not saying that they should make things completely broken, but allowing some people to kind of go outside of that window of what's normally acceptable. The dog, thank you very much. Holy shit, thank you very much. The 20 gifted community subs. Thank you, dude. Thank you. I really fucking appreciate that, man. Doing it right is right. Yeah, it's fun. Fun is the goal. Now, it's not fun to lose against somebody that you have no chance against. That's not fun. And in Classic WoW, I think that's what would happen a lot. Right? There were some classes that just purely countered other classes, and it was not fun. But I would say that a level of balance somewhere around Cataclysm or Wrath of the Lich King is great. And that is good for the game. Like, Wrath of the Lich King balance was, in my opinion, the pinnacle of the way the game should have worked. Okay? Mop balance was perfect. No, it wasn't. What do you mean? No, it wasn't. Like, why do people go back and they say, just because Mop had a lot of buttons doesn't mean that it was balanced? Like, God, you guys are like, people have such a hard-on for Mop because they're watching all these high-end players that are reminiscing about it because they were really good and they knew all the buttons for it. You guys probably don't even remember all the spells that your character had back in Mop, okay? So just go ahead and give it a rest with Mists of Pandaria. Wrath of the Lich King was infinitely better, okay? Mists of Pandaria was good, okay? It was good, but I think Wrath was infinitely better.
Game that is, you know, having more interesting gear that's a bit harder to balance.
Fuck yeah.
And my personal take might be a bit more controversial here. Mythic Raiders are a tiny percentage of the player base, and the game can't be designed around them primarily. World of Warcraft should not be an MMO esport. World of Warcraft should be an MMO RPG, as much as media hype might try to push it in the other direction.
True.
And while we're on that topic, let's just talk about
True.
gameplay. Blizzard do appear to be pushing in the direction of giving players
true.
more impactful gameplay decisions. Now, look, essences can't fix the class design problems, but to think that they would is, I believe, unrealistic. The next opportunity for a class overhaul is 9.0, and I do not say that snarkily. I get the class problems, and I agree that they are a valid...
That's such a cock. That is honestly such a cock. I mean, Blizzard, the idea that like, oh, well, you know what? In a year and a half from now, the game's going to be good. So why don't you just wait around until then, and maybe we'll roll the dice and we'll see if your class doesn't suck dick. That's the problem. They can't just... The idea that it's like some sort of like, oh, it's not realistic for Blizzard to overhaul and change classes in the middle of the expansion, they need to shut the fuck up with that idea. Because they can do it. They can easily do it. They can make a couple of changes to at least make it slightly better. Torben, thank you very much for the resub. This is bullshit that you have to wait for that long in order for your class to be good again. And it's not fair. It's not fair to the player base. They have to sit there and play some fucking garbage-ass version of the game for that long. No, that's ridiculous. No, 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 no.
Reason to not play the game if they're that much of an issue. I totally agree with that.
Okay.
But still, for what they are, the essences are pretty good. Rather than being a fix to class design, I see them more as being like the Legion Legendaries, but with no RNG and a bit deeper customization. Let's be real, if the Legion Legendary effects worked like these essences, Legion would have been a better expansion in terms of its gameplay. Now, what the essences do show us is that Blizzard are giving us interesting choices, ways to customize our character. Now, sure, there'll be a BIS for different scenarios, but broadly speaking, the essences allow you to combine, well, you know, your essence choices with your talent tree to create a highly tailored build. And I do think that giving yourself more options in that regard is interesting character progression. So what's this going to mean for the next expansion? Well, Blizzard seem to be wary of external character progression, you know, things like the artifacts and stuff like that. They've talked about how they didn't really anticipate how badly you know, just how bad it would feel moving from Legion into BFA in terms of your character's, like, capabilities.
How the fuck would you not be able to assume that? Like, I mean, really, it was such dog shit. I don't even know how you can say that's not gonna... I mean, like, you literally have the greatest weapon of all time for your class, and you throw it away for a green. And you're surprised that players don't feel good about that?
So overall, that does mean it's hard to know exactly what they'll do. Personally, I think they're going to put a lot more back into the classes. I wouldn't be surprised if they undid some of the GCD changes, and I think we're going to get something...
They've already undone half of them, and they're probably going to undo the other half of them pretty soon too, because people don't like the GCD changes. Like, that's what it comes down to. Even if Blizzard thinks that, oh wow, this is such a great idea, the players don't fucking like it. And ultimately, that's what matters. They don't like it.
Like the essences that just exists for the duration of the next expansion, but with the base classes being added to and, you know, not being taken away from, like we saw from Legion into BFA. Now, moving on, all of this leaves me with one question. When you look at this patch, is the zone variation their ideal design, or is it a test? And more broadly speaking, to what degree is this entire patch just an A/B test? While 8.2 retains issues from 8.0 and 8.1, okay, I think it's fair to say that many of its ideas are very different. So, yeah, could this just mean we'll get dual zones in future patches? Dragon Isles and Nyalotha. Indeed, if you got the designs of both Mechagon and Nazjatar and squeezed them into the same zone, it would be muddled and complicated. It would be a jumbled zone without a clear gameplay identity. Alternatively, they could be doing a test though. Do players prefer a more sandbox-like theme park, as we see with Mechagon, or do they prefer a typical WoW patch zone, albeit one with a good bit more depth, like with Nazjatar? Whatever their plan is, I'm fairly sure the Blizzard are going to be paying a lot of attention to this, and given the timelines of development, I think they're going to be incorporating a lot of what they learn here into the next expansion, for it's almost certainly like having its zones being mapped out like as we speak. So what's the takeaway here now that we've really went through most of this patch? Well, I think you can...
Here's my takeaway right now, is that 8.2 is a massive improvement over everything else that they've done in BFA. I think it's absolutely great. I fucking love it. And I think it's an amazing fucking thing, okay? It is an infinitely better, and I'm very happy about it. Like, overall, I'm very happy about it. Hopefully, Blizzard sees the positivity that players are giving 8.2. I think that it's received more positivity than any patch that Blizzard's made, maybe ever since the Mage Tower. And they take that and they move that forward, and they use that to direct and inform decisions that they make in the future.
See, the Blizzard are moving away from many things that players have not liked in the past. Not everything has been a clear win, right? I don't think everything's been a clear win, but I think their ultimate intention here seems to have been to listen and respond. Ultimately, this patch was pretty darn late in the cycle, so it seems like they decided to be a little bit more reactive and design this around the issues of 8.0 instead of just plowing ahead with their existing plan. So I don't think we can extrapolate from this patch that, you know, WoW is totally 180'd and all of its problems are solved or anything like that, but I do think we can say that this is a big move in the right direction. It just depends if they stay the course. And really, it's just on Blizzard to think hard about the lessons that they've learnt and to work them into the fundamentals of the next expansion, so that 9.2 is not left having to fix the problems of 9.1 and 9.0, just like 8.2 has been left having to fix the problems of 8.0 and 8.1. So
that's the way it works now, guys. Is you bring out the expansion and it sucks, and then as time goes on, we're going to have people slowly, you know, improve the expansion until it becomes good, and then the next expansion comes out and it's bad, and then you have to slowly improve that expansion until it's good, at which point you lose all of that progress, and then it becomes bad again. So the expansions basically follow the same template as your characters do. At the end of the expansion, your character's awesome, and then new expansion comes out, your character sucks again. Same thing with the expansions.
With that, let me know, what do you think about this patch? What do you think about how this patch is influencing the design of the game moving forward? And what parts of this patch would you like to see be incorporated into the fundamentals of the game? And just broadly, how would you like the fundamentals to change in 9.0? I would love to hear that. So there you go, that is it for me. Let me know what you thought about these topics down below, and with that, I will see you next time.
So we need to talk about this. We need to talk big. We need to talk big about this, okay? I'd rather just play Classic until Pantheon comes out in 2030. You guys can think that. You can be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna play Classic forever. I can guarantee you, after you get like full BIS gear from Nax, and you know you've completed all of your PvP goals, and you're just sitting around in Ironforge, and there's nothing really for you to
cascade.
Do, right? At a certain point, you're just gonna get tired of it. That's what I think it really is. You're just going to get fucking tired of it. And I think that's what's going to happen. If anything, that's what it's going to be. It takes 2 years, though. Yeah, it does take 2 years, but you're not necessarily playing it constantly every single, every single day or whatever, right? Let me see here. Just